Good afternoon and welcome to the Marketplace. Coming up, economist Professor Peter Quartey criticizes Ghana's procurement system, saying it has promoted corruption.
I think our procurement processes are not helping us. We are encouraging or centralizing corruption. We are helping others to benefit, rent seekers to benefit from the system.
Also this afternoon, the National Pensions Regulatory Authority rolls out a new supervisory model to safeguard contributions of workers.
As regulators, we have developed a new technology which we call the risk-based supervision. That is also helping us in real time to see what the risks are in the industry.
And Ghana Stock Exchange places 9th in dollar terms among 15 stock markets in Africa, ending September this year. My name is Faustina Savo. Thanks for choosing us. Let's settle now for details. Economist Professor Peter Quartey has criticized Ghana's procurement system, saying it is promoting corruption. According to him, the country's procurement system needs to be checked and reviewed to ensure value for money and accountability of government expenditure. Here's more.
Procurement for most government projects are conducted by the Public Procurement Authority as the state agency mandated to grant approvals before any transaction. Many have questioned the relevance of this process after it emerged that some of these procurements are overpriced after auditing. According to the director of ISE, Professor Peter Quartey, this is also a contributory factor to the overspending in the economy.
We still see some of the leakages. Some of the expenditures that we see, they are not value for money spending. The procurement process itself, if you look at the cost of a particular procurement and you should go to the market to buy, the gap, the disparity is just too huge to justify such or warrant such an expenditure. I think our procurement processes are not helping us. We are encouraging or centralizing corruption. We are helping others to benefit, rent seekers to benefit from the system. Procurement has to be dealt with. And
he therefore called for a tracking system to ensure that every procurement is done according to its intended purpose.
Then as well as ensuring value for money spending in all the areas. Expenditure tracking itself is important, that you track from the point you release the funds up to the end beneficiary to see that, yes, the money is trickling down to the intended people. I think we don't do a lot of that. We wait and do post-audit. That is not the way to go. You also track the spending.
Meanwhile, the government fiscal deficit for this year is expected to go down.
Well, the National Pensions Regulatory Authority has rolled out a new supervisory model that is expected to help safeguard contributions of workers and protect the sector from shocks. This move has been influenced by the impact of the debt exchange program on the sector. Hifodata Kofi is Chief Executive of the National Pensions Regulatory Authority. He's been speaking to my colleague, George Riafi.
As regulators, you have to be on top of your game, in terms of how you regulate and monitor the industry. Of course, we use technology, we use some kind of, I would say, sometimes moral suasion, especially in circumstances where you have to put in some regulatory forbearance to ensure that you don't leave your industry too far behind. You carry them along with you, and you bring in innovations and a whole lot of technology that can also help your industry to keep alongside with you. Yeah, so as regulators, we're doing the best that we can under the circumstances, but you cannot rest on your oars, because naturally as the industry grows up, there will be institutions which will avoid, there will be institutions which will lag behind, there will be institutions which will be doing the right thing. So you always have to keep up with it. And that's why I would say, as regulators, we have developed a new technology which we call the risk-based supervision. That is also helping us in real time to see what the risks are in the industry, and then to see how we can mitigate them, and where we cannot mitigate, and there are, say, the residual risk, we use inspections and sometimes even penalties and other forms of sanctions to bring everybody up to speed.
Again, going forward again, what has been the level of engagement with government to ensure that as time goes on, we reduce the time lag for meeting these contributions to the scheme when it comes to Tier 1 and Tier 2?
The engagement is regular. We go to the Ministry of Finance, we go to the controller, and have discussions, especially when we have complaints from the public sector schemes. That and here, talking about the public sector schemes, we're talking SSNIT here. We're also talking about for example, the teachers scheme, the civil servant scheme, the doctors and nurses scheme, the judicial service, and other public service workers schemes. These are the public sector schemes that government is mainly a strong employer, and that is where sometimes some of these delays will come from. So when we have complaints from them, then we will approach government and see how best we can work through that.
Well, let's broaden the conversation here on the marketplace. I'm joined on Zoom by the pension analyst that we all love, Dr. Andrews Agbobi. Thank you so much for joining us here on Marketplace. Now, what do you make of this whole development about the pension arrears and government's delay in clearing arrears?
Thank you very much. From my experience, the pension arrears have actually worsened. It didn't used to be the case. When we start, let's say 2017, 2018, 2019, we used to have about 3 months, in arrears from especially the public sector scheme, which are the one that are related to government. So, and that move on to around 10 months, and then 8 months. So it got worsened, especially at the end of 2022, onwards. As we speak now, the last time for most of the public sector scheme that we receive contributions, from government is November 2022, right? So you can see that from December 2022 up to now, the contribution hasn't come. So out of that, most pensions board have to devise a way of how to, find a way of paying their members. For example, paying them some portions of the money, then when the last payment comes, they are paid the rest. So the arrears has been quite pervasive, and how do you call it, has been consistent. So, from where I sit and teaching in class and others, we expect that, because the private pension scheme, for example, the Tier 2s, are what we call the defined contribution schemes, where they are investment driven. When there are arrears that are built from such schemes, it hurts the beneficiary, because usually when government or the public sector schemes are being paid arrears, they don't come out with the penalties. For example, the 3% and all that. Yeah, they are charged, but usually the employer doesn't pay those amount of money. So arrears generally, especially for the Tier 2s, I can say that it's not the best. It's not the best of things, to have arrears for scheme that we are saying that they are investment, driven. So for me, I can say that we need to improve upon it. And the story around it was expecting that, okay, once the debt exchange is finished, there can be some room, so there's some physical space so that those arrears can be cleared and then order. But let's hope and see, because the debt exchange is not completely ended yet. So we know that the domestic one has, come some way. But the external one, we know that there are still teething problems, So, most public pensions fund, like I said earlier, the arrears are a particular challenge. Yeah.
So what do you suggest could be done to sustain the pension scheme? Because there's been concerns that for 10 years from now, it might be unsustainable?
Where I see it, I would say that in terms of sustainability, sustainability simply means that we are expecting that whatever we are doing now, we can continue to be doing it and probably do it better. Yes, for me, I can say that most of the private pension schemes are doing well, irrespective of the arrears that are built, and those arrears, when the employer usually coming from the public sector schemes are being paid, yes, they are paid like 2 or 3 months, and then the investments are done. So the other challenge, which I can say now, is the high interest rate that we find ourselves in the country. So when you are having an investment such as pension scheme that will pay you a bulk money at once, and you have interest rate that inflation that are higher, it makes that most of the private pension schemes now are having a challenge called negative real returns. Okay, because if you look at, let's take an example. For example, we know that the inflation rate for the last month was around 40%, which it has even come down. Now take 1 year treasury bill rate, or the government of Ghana treasury bill for 1 year is for 32%. The 3 months are around 28, 20 something. So a pure theory will tell that if you take away the inflation from it, you get negative returns. So real return is a challenge for people now. So if we can be able to control the inflations, which is a major challenge for people who have fixed income like that, I think that the most returns that are done by the private sector, around 20, above 20, it's quite meaningful returns. So once the economic fundamentals are controlled, the contributions comes, and then the NPRA or the pension regulator, yes, is doing their work, like they said, doing the, the supervision work, ensuring that people stay, core. I expect that, yes, sustainability will be good, because so far the private pension has done remarkably well. If you look at it, where it started from and talking over 40 billion now, you can see that it's a very, very major contribution to our economy. So in the future, if macroeconomic fundamentals are, controlled, I believe that the private pension scheme one day in the future will be like most of these advanced countries, as compared to our GDP. Because if you look at the growth year on year, the way the private pension scheme is doing, I can tell it's doing remarkably. Apart from this, challenge of, I said, the macroeconomic and then the arrears and then, other issues, if the regulator is able, to continue with these supervisions and even the risk-based one that they are introducing now and ensuring that everybody stays the line, I believe that the future can only be bright for Ghana when it comes to private pension schemes.
Thank you so much, pension analyst there, Andrews Aglubi. Now, tension is mounting on the Tema Oil Refinery as the General Transport Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union demands the immediate dissolution of the board of directors. Now, this is due to incompetence and alleged corrupt deals. At a news conference this morning, union executives Sewa Duncan Williams and Jojo Kumsin outlined the rationale and circumstances triggering the demand for the dissolution of the board.
The constant and continuous changing of the entity's name suggests that this entity is trying to, at every point in time, to hide all the dubious and scandalous issues behind it. It keeps changing its name, and now we have a new entity with the same people, by name Tema Energy and Processing Limited. Now, what even strikes all the workers here is that behind the blind side, or at the blind side of all workers, they have induced some unicorn executive and their cause to form Tor Workers Charity Trust, and then they have given them 15% of the shares, 20% of the shares of Tema Energy and Processing Limited. At the blind side of management and the entire workforce, we want this clear cut of unethical and conflict of interest to be resolved by the appointing authority. We want management to take strict measures in averting all these issues and make sure that these individuals who have perpetrated this act are brought to book. Yes. Otherwise, as workers in the refinery and as executive, we can't guarantee their security and safety in the refinery. This is our simple call to the stakeholders that have been mandated to manage the refinery. Thank you.
All right, so madam, tell us what time frame are you looking at for the appointing authorities to effect the demand that you make?
With the immediate effect, we want them. Within this week and next week, the board shouldn't come here. We don't want them, especially the 3 names that has been mentioned, because Mr. Appleton is behind whatever is going on. It's not hearsay. It's something that we have witnessed. Because normally, personally, I don't like to say hearsay. We have witnessed his participation on whatever is going on. Appleton should be off the board. He was part of the previous board. The question is, what did he achieve for the previous board when he was on it? Mrs. Grant was part of the previous board. What did she do? Nothing. We don't even know the reason why they became part of this board. We are asking the president and the minister to make sure that these people are off the board. We don't, as soon as possible. They don't have any business here because they are here for their personal interest. The previous board, they didn't get anything. So they want to use this one to achieve something for their personal reason. That is not what we want. We want someone who has Tor at heart, someone who wants to run Tor. If they are not ready, they should not be here. They are not ready.
But is that not the reason why Torrenco is coming?
That's the reason why, because Mr. Appleton is hiding behind Torrenco. When you mention Torrenco, you are referring to Michael Dakun. Who is Michael Dakun?
My colleague Carlos Caloni also spoke to the chairman of the Senior Staff Association, Bright Adongo.
I think this is of law. I mean, I don't waste my time on these things. The issues about myself has formed a company with board. There's no truth in that. There's no truth in that. The fact of the matter is that this is the partner who decided that out of his own share, he will create a trust fund for toll workers. And it is his share, he can withdraw it. You understand? The essence of this trust fund was that they want workers to feel part of ownership. If you are part ownership to the company, and there is something going wrong in the company, workers will volunteer information so that toll can be run efficiently. It is when it is run efficiently, whatever percentage is gotten, then 20% will go into the trust fund for every worker. So if you know that if the company makes profit, it is then that we also get a trust fund which is yielding 20%, then every worker will be vigilant.
But their concern is that you've not included them in the deal, the discussion. And even now, Torrenco is here to fully come on board. How come you have that trust fund set up? That's their concern.
The trust fund was set up by the partner. Their membership is on the board. So I don't know what they are talking about. There's no truth in that.
All right. So, that was the chairman of the Senior Staff Association of the Tama Oil Refinery reacting to these concerns by the junior staff.
Well, the Ghana Stock Exchange placed 9th in dollar terms among 15 stock markets in Africa and in September this year. In local currency term, the Accra Bourse placed 4th. Here's more in this report.
The GSE recorded a 29.8% return in cedi terms for investors in the third quarter of 2023. In dollar terms, it registered a 0.22% return for investors. This is coming on the back of the International Monetary Fund program. According to the data, the non-banking stocks led the gains in the equity market. They include BOPP, Total Energies PLC, Unilever and MTN Ghana. In all, 9 stocks recorded gains as compared to 8 losers. The biggest losers were Enterprise Ghana, Access Bank Ghana, and SIC Insurance. Meanwhile, the market capitalization also shot up to 74.89 billion cedis from 70.24 billion cedis on June 30, 2023. The financial stock index, however, lost 17.57 in value in the first 6 months of 2023. This was primarily due to the domestic debt exchange program, which impacted their balance sheet.
Cybersecurity has become a critical area as far as internet users are concerned. The digital landscape, as we know it, is constantly evolving just as cyber criminals devise new ways to target users. Today on our Let's Talk Tech segment, we discuss the biggest internet dangers you and your family need to watch out for. With us to discuss this is lead for ISO of Africa, Henry Kobler. Henry, thanks for joining us here on Marketplace. Now, what are some of the internet dangers that users fall prey to, and how can they protect themselves against it?
Thank you very much. So quite a lot of times, I think that there have been a lot of complaints when it comes down to the internet usages, apart from the benefits that we sort of enjoy when it comes down to the internet. I mean, currently you would realize that there's been quite a lot of issues when it comes down to identity theft. Quite a lot of people have sort of been looking and complaining about their identity being used on the internet to perpetrate fraud. Quite a lot of data breaches have also been a big problem in the industry. And we're looking at antiviruses, malwares. Antiviruses and malwares have actually just been a very normal phenomenon when it comes down to the internet usages. We've had quite a lot of issues when it comes down to phishing emails. I mean, I'm sure that quite a lot of people are beginning to see quite a lot of emails that are coming in from unauthorized sources or sources they are not sort of aware of and all of that. Fake websites have been a normal point when it comes down to the internet. With the current scams that has been coming on, I mean, from any parts, whether from mobile network parts or from normal usage pages, I think that it's actually been a big one. We've seen a high risk in terms of romance scams. That has also been a big deal. I mean, quite a lot of people are having conversations with people in the name of romance, and that is sort of getting them into trouble. And I think that in Ghana, one of the biggest of them sort of is that we're looking at cyberbullying. Quite a lot of people are experiencing cyberbullying. I mean, in terms of their reputation, the write-ups, the blogs, and all of those things coming in against them. And so some of these dangers sort of are posing a lot of risk and reputational damages to individuals and to corporate organizations. And I think that there's quite a lot of ways that we can look at in terms of preventing some of these things.
Now, it raises the question, how strong is Ghana's cybersecurity system and also measures?
I mean, in terms of the cybersecurity, it's always a growing trend. You can never say that you're actually 100% up when it comes down to protection in terms of cybersecurity. Generally, we're having some lessons and protections which is coming in from the government in terms of policies, privacy policy, data protection policies, and all of those things. But I believe that when it comes down to cybersecurity, I mean, most of the important part depends on the individual that is sort of hanging on to the internet. I can assure you that almost about 80% of users that are using softwares like in terms of operating systems or even antiviruses that are sitting on a lot of PCs in Ghana currently are sort of pirated softwares. And so if you're having a pirated software which is running at the base of your computer, I mean, you can definitely understand the risk that is involved. And then you sort of hang on to quite a lot of these unauthorized Wi-Fis and free Wi-Fis that have been provided all over. And so definitely hanging on to a Wi-Fi gives you the higher risk of allowing remote access to your PCs, which gives away a lot of personal information. I mean, quite a lot of people think that they don't really have too much information to give, but you'll be surprised that there's so much that can be gathered away from your PC, your emails, your conversations on WhatsApp, and all of those devices. Basically, just hanging on to an unauthorized Wi-Fi. Quite a lot of people don't even use stronger passwords when it comes down to their computers. And so, I mean, whenever you sort of using the same passwords all over your accounts, just at the breach of one password, you're actually hanging on to the risk of just being exposed. Quite a lot of people don't also put in the required measures when it comes down to authentications. And so, I mean, quite apart from the two-factor authentication methods and SMS OTP methods, which are used to guard some of our systems. Most of people don't really like to go through that stress of always authenticating their accounts before they actually allow some access into most of these accounts. And if you're looking at how we sort of have a lot of banking apps floating on mobile applications. A lot of people don't like to put in that security measure. And so the government can probably just put in all the policies and all of those things to make sure cybersecurity is on the higher. But if we don't necessarily do that directly and ensure that we ourselves are getting checked, I think that we can always be at risk.
Thank you so much, Henry Kobler, his lead for Eyes of Africa. And that's how we draw the curtains here on Marketplace. My name is Faustina Safu. For more news, please log on to myjoyonline.com. Good afternoon.